little printf, please welcome to City Code stage warmly, Fred Herbet.
Thank you. That's extremely flattering as an introduction. Yes. So, yeah, the little printf is a little story that I based out of The Little Prince. Because as in true software fashion, nothing is truly original, and it has been written in decades before today. So, yeah, I have been lucky enough to have, I'm going to take the book and read it, if you please, because there's a few pages and I don't know everything by heart. Also, it's good for a kind of feeling there that you've got a big book. So, yeah, I've been lucky enough to have been born before computers and video games were ubiquitous in your lives. I had the luck to play outdoors with friends and my brothers and of inventing our own games. We could be our own heroes, use a twig that would instantly become a bow, a gun, a sword, or a telescope. It could be anything except maybe a boomerang, because once you throw the stick, you kind of have to go fetch it back, and it's not really a good boomerang. So yeah, at some point I grew up and it became embarrassing to play that way. You can train a pine cone as a grenade and then pretend to have magical powers when other kids start thinking that being an adult is what is cool. You just don't fit in anymore. You eventually get pressured into growing up. Still, I've had a very lucky and good childhood. At some point I got the chance to play video games and to use computers. There could be the imaginary world that you had wanted all this time materialized in front of you. It's consuming you, and for a moment you live a different life. But there's something particular about most video games. You don't create. You react, you consume, but it's not something that you create. I eventually did improvisational theater as a teenager, and then again it was okay to be with people and create and pretend out of nothing. And yeah, improvisational theater in Quebec is a bit different, where it's an ice rink, because hockey. This is not a joke, this is really how it goes, and then you get the benches on the side, you have the team there, and then you get the themes from the referee and everything, but it's entirely based on hockey. Because Quebec. So when I got into vocational college to study multimedia from 2005 to 2008, I wanted to be a web designer and I was not very good at it. But I eventually accidentally tripped into programming work. I found it amazing. It was creative, and I was also able to earn money out of it, which is something that most creative work doesn't let you do. I then designed the mechanism to my first game, and it blew my mind. It's danger, there's an armed man in this building 3. Starting the 3rd version. I was told that's not a real video game. That's just an HTML form. You should have used an array for the text and options. It would have been better. The code needs cleaning up. I was a bit disheartened at that, because the game was really about the 11 pages of text I had written for the choose your adventure aspect of it. But I realized that if I wanted to make stuff for more people, and that these people, I wanted them to think it was good, I would have to learn a lot. I'd have to learn real programming. Move from JavaScript, which was Microsoft's Internet Explorer 6 version of JavaScript in a GUI toolkit, to something a bit better, like PHP. So I learned PHP and JavaScript. Then eventually I was told to learn how to do real programming again. PHP is terrible. I was told to maybe try Python, which I then learned. But real programmers knew fancier stuff, and Python's Lambda didn't cut it. Object-oriented programming was not where you wanted to be anymore. Reading the structure and interpretation of computer programs would be the next good step, I was told, because it was like the Bible of computer science. So I got that book. That got me to Scheme. And then I got the K&R book, because real programmers in the real world did C. And I registered for part-time classes at my local university, was juggling them with work, because real programmers knew data structures and math, which I learned to some extent. I started reading papers and books, because real programmers stayed up to date and knew fancy algorithms. Somewhere through that, I picked up Erlang, like half the speakers here today, and started making a career out of it. I wrote a book on it. Curiously enough, nobody ever questioned if I was a real author, or a real writer, or a real illustrator. Hell, they got me a job teaching Erlang without ever having it used in a production system. It's just when you program that people do doubt that you're a programmer just for the sake of being there. So I lived my life flying around the world, telling people how to do things I had sometimes never done myself, while everyone suddenly seemed to believe I was a real programmer myself because of things that I did that were not related to programming in the first place. One day I was stuck in an airport, coming back from a conference, furiously typing at a terminal, when an odd, gentle voice asked me, "If you please, design me a system." What? Design me a system, please. I looked up from my screen, surprised by the request. And I looked around and saw this kid who aspired to be a developer and wanted me to call him printf, which I felt was very stupid and gimmicky. It looked a bit like this. "I don't know computers much, but it seems you do. I want to write programs and blog about them and have people use and read them. Please design me a system." Now, that was a surprising request, and I had been awake for 20 hours by then. Not too sure I fully understood or felt like it. I told him systems were hard. I didn't know what he wanted to do, how he wanted it to fail, how many readers it should support, where he'd want to host it, and I could therefore not design a proper system with so little information. "That doesn't matter. Design me a system." So I made him the following architecture diagram by hand. So he looked at it and said, "No, this system is not good enough. Make me another." So I did. And I gave him a rundown of how it would work. Everything was in there. My new friend smiled politely. "That is not what I want. It's way too complex and does a lot of stuff I don't need." I felt a bit insulted, having considered redundancy, monitoring, backups, caches, other mechanisms to reduce load, external payment processors for legal protection, failovers, easy deployment, and so on. I could have charged a decent amount of money as a consulting fee for that. Out of patience, I just drew this. I added, "This is your design. The system you want is inside the black box," hoping that the shitty answer would have him leave me alone. I was surprised to hear back, "That is exactly the way I wanted it." And that is how I met little printf. I soon learned of this guy's portfolio. In his repositories were only small programs, simple web pages with forms, trivial command line utils. They would be unspectacular, would come into being, and no sooner disappear. Then at some point he started working on bigger programs that use multiple modules. It needed sockets, access the disk, talk to an actual database. When it first built and ran properly, little printf was amazed, but the program was not enough. It needed refactorings, better tests, documentation, linting and analysis. The program would run for a while, and one morning it crashed. And it crashed again and again. The configurations were wrong, the logs would not rotate, the disk had unpredictable speed, the network would get the hiccups, bugs would show up, the encodings would be confused, the database needed vacuuming, which happens for real and it's surprising, transactions would hang, certificates would expire, CVEs would keep coming, and the metrics would remain silent. It kept turning to spaghetti. It told me, "The fact is, I didn't know anything. I had to have judged by my needs. I got the hubris of writing a fancy system, and I spent so much time fixing it. It felt like it canceled the time it saved me. Still, I should have known what a wonderful thing it was." One morning, he decided to leave his office. "Goodbye," he said to a blinking light that seemed to have burnt out. He left to see what the world of software had to offer aside from his messy little server. The logs would keep accumulating until the hard drive would fill no more. So he went to a workspace, looking for experienced developers from whom to get tips and help. The first one he met was a very proud senior engineer who seemed to feel rather superior. "Ah, here comes a learner. Welcome to my domain of which I am the expert," he said. "An expert?" little printf asked. "Does this mean you can program anything and everything?" "Yes," the expert answered. He added, "Well, almost. I only programs that are worth programming. I don't lose my time on trivialities. Many programs I've never written, but I could write with all the ease in the world." "Ah, so could you help me with my system?" As soon as the little printf started explaining his business, the domain expert interrupted him. "I'm sorry, but I don't really see the point of doing that." "Why not?" "Experience. I'm a good programmer, and I'm good at programming the things I program, and I program things I am good at. By getting better at this fairly restricted set of things that I'm already good at, I make sure I'm more valuable than ever at it. Call it job security, call it survival of the fittest, but that's how I roll." And why can't you help me? Well, you see, taking my time away to help you means I divert important self-investment into furthering the progress of others. That's a losing strategy for me. The best way to learn for you is the way I took myself. Struggle very hard and figure it out yourself. It forges character. That doesn't seem very efficient, said little printf. Well, you can go to school and learn, or you can learn it on your own. Really, what it does is weed out the lazy people who just want it easy, and forces everyone who stays here to be those that really deserve it. The moment we let the moochers in, the very value of the work I produce goes down with it. Do you not think cooperation or colleagues should help you with that? Not really. I work best when left alone and not being distracted. Every time I end up forced working with others, it's nigh impossible to get our stuff working together. Out of exasperation, I grab their work and rewrite most of it in a sane way. Then it works right. Little printf was kind of surprised to meet an expert who seemed so disinterested in helping others, yet so annoyed by their perceived lack of skill. It was a bit sad that this man narrowed his vision of himself to just the one area he knew, to the point where he didn't do anything else than create problems for himself to fix. I see. Well, I guess I'm happy you won't be giving me your help, said my little friend. What do you mean? Asked the meritocratic man, whose values seemed suddenly downgraded. Don't you think the work I do is interesting? Oh, that I do. It just seems like you would see me as a hindrance and annoyance more than anything else. And what I'm looking for is help, not affliction. And little printf left swiftly, leaving the expert to realize he had made himself untouchable in more ways than just his job security. On his way, little printf went in front of the door to an office occupied by a man surrounded by thick hardcover books with fancy images on them like wizards, dragons, fractals, and mathematical patterns. Nice books, sir, said printf. Thanks. I think they're essential material for programmers. If you don't have them, you're not really a pro. I guess I'm not a pro then, said little printf. Which one is your favorite? Oh, well, I haven't read most of them. Are you not a good programmer then? No, I am not, the developer proudly added. In fact, I'm a terrible programmer. That's a shame, said little printf, who continued. I'm getting better myself. Have you heard of the Dunning-Kruger effect? Asked the man. No, what is it? It's a cognitive bias thing. It basically says that the people who are less competent tend to overestimate their qualifications. And the people who are competent tend to systematically underestimate theirs. So, if I think I'm getting better, I'm probably not great. Yeah, exactly, you're probably bad. On the other hand, I openly say I'm a terrible programmer, but according to Dunning-Kruger, I'm probably just underestimating myself. And that makes me a good developer, don't you see? I guess. That's because self-deprecation is a vital tool to the developer. The moment you feel you're good, you relax and stop improving. Doesn't it mean that the moment you feel good about yourself, you're on your way to failure and then you should feel bad? Yes, but the way to go about this is to say that everything is terrible, even if you have no solutions to offer. That way you look smart, but you don't have much to contribute. What do you mean? Say I go online and see a project I dislike. The trick is to point out everything that is wrong. Give no more information than that. You can probably subtly point the ways in which the person who did the thing is an idiot and get away with it. And how is anyone better for this? Well, I like to think that they're better for knowing they're on the wrong track, and I'm better off showing them that. It's a bit of smoke and mirrors. Nobody knows what they're doing, but that way it looks like I do. And what happens when you are asked for help and can't do anything about it? That's when you go back to saying everything is terrible. You have too much yak shaving to do, improving other things and being overly pessimistic. They're on their own. So this is all posturing? You're gaming your way through? You're the person who pretends to be incompetent at things they know, which makes people who actually know nothing there feel even worse. And you're also the person who pretends to be competent at things you don't know, so people trying to improve in that area also feel bad. In any case, competence has very little to do with it. Reputation is pretty important, though. People hire friends, And people who aren't liked and non-essential get fired first. Try to change the system, and you become disliked. It's all a very social game. It's how it works in the industry and probably in academia too, though I wouldn't know now, would I? It's not about who you know, selling yourself, your own personal brand, you know. That's how you get jobs in the business. printf thought a bit and said, if this is how things are and you must feel bad and make others feel bad to do well, maybe I don't want a job in the business. And then he walked out. During the time that would have been lunch break, printf interrupted a person who had seemingly forgotten to eat their lunch, a sandwich growing cold by the minute while sitting at their desk and looking at their screen. Now, looking that and that, I'm wondering who has a warmed-up sandwich that just grows cold, drum like that. Yeah, it's already cold, dude. Sorry. That seemed like quite a busy person who might have known what they were doing. printf asked, if a primary database can fail, can the follower fail too? Everything you run, the person said, can and will sooner or later fail. Even the things telling you that things have failed? Yes, even these ones. All large systems are in some state of partial failure at any given time. Then, trying to make a reliable system, what uses it? The person didn't know, for at that moment they were trying to answer a page for the sky falling out of their head due to a broken cloud. And we're wondering the same thing. Then, making reliable systems, what uses it? Pressed a little printf again. Upset as the person was dealing with the production issue, with this kid not letting go and a sandwich going to waste, it's already going to waste, the person impatiently shot back, it's of no use at all. Programming is all shit anyway. Oh, little printf gasped. And then there was a moment of silence. The little guy responded with a hint of resent. I don't believe you. Programs are fragile, but programmers can make good efforts and make things better and useful. No answer came back. At that point, the person had opened a document explaining how to boot a new copy of the entire cluster from scratch, and things seemed to go from bad to worse. And you actually believe good, reliable program? Oh no, the person said. No. I don't believe in good or reliable programs. Not anymore. They're all terrible. I just told you the first thing that came to my head because I'm dealing with one of these shitty systems right now. Don't you see I'm trying to keep this stuff running? This shit is actually of consequence. printf stared back with a shocked expression. Actually of consequence? You talk just like a real programmer. He added, you mix everything up, confuse everything. There's been millions of programs, and for years they've been running and failing just the same. And now people use them, and people have used them and needed them. And I know some programs that run nowhere but a single laptop, and a single mistake could destroy entire communities without even anybody noticing. And you think this is not important? The person remained silent. The fourth workspace my friend visited had a man whose computer was covered in so many stickers nobody could tell what brand it was. Motor MVC, Quadrangular JS, Go Query, CoMeteor, some Japanese soundy thing. Hi, interrupted printf. What are you doing? Alchemist, BongoDB, MochaScript, WalkTime.js, PortaSQL. The man kept going and going. What are you doing? He asked again, louder this time. Oh, I'm trying out new frameworks. Tools, databases, languages. Wow, you seem to be going fast, maybe as fast as 10 programmers put together. Yes, well, the industry moves so very fast. He looked at his phone for a second and added, there, Cardboard.io framework came up with version 3.5. It broke compatibility with 3.4 and this yielded 4 forks in the community. I have to try them all to know which to use. And what do you do learning all of these? I'm an early adopter. If you don't stay up to date, you get stuck writing COBOL or mumps for a living. You want to find the next big thing and ride the wave to the top. Has it ever worked? Oh yes, I found about Rails before it got big, and I figured out Node.js before it was popular. And I was on the first beta copies of Redis and MongoDB and React. I was the first one to use Vagrant, and then I got us to switch to Docker. But of course, now it's all about unikernels. Cool. And yeah, that's a last-minute edit. And all these things you were at the forefront of, how did they pay off? Oh, it didn't. By the time Rails became huge, I had moved on to the next big thing. So I didn't get left behind. Similarly for the other ones. Here's hoping for unikernels, though. I see, added a little printf pensively. What problems do you solve with all of these frameworks? Oh, well, I make sure we don't use something that is not going to be big so that this company doesn't get to bet on technologies that have no future. It's very important work because if you don't do that, you can't find anyone to hire except old graybeards behind the times, and you want self-motivated go-getters who are also early adopters, said the man. That is funny, chimed our friend. It is very hard. In the starter world, if you want A players, you need to get good technology to bring them in. Otherwise, you're stuck with inflexible laggards. Nobody wants to be an inflexible laggard. Little printf interjected. No, that's not what I meant. He added, I mean, it's funny that tools are meant to solve problems for us, but for you, the tools themselves have become the problem. And while the man stood there in silence on his new cool treadmill desk, little printf hopped out of the room. In the next office over sat a tired employee with dozens of empty coffee cups, only 3 of which are drawn, typing angrily. Hi, said the little printf. The woman didn't stop what she was doing. She kept typing furiously. Hello? He asked again. The woman stopped at once, got a flask out of a drawer in her desk, and took a swig. I have a terrible job, she said. I do DevOps. End of the story. No. It started okay, where I mostly develop and then sometimes debug stuff. But as time moved on, it got worse and worse. I started finding fires in our stack, and then more fires kept happening. I got rid of most of them, putting small miracles here and there, and then to meet the deadlines on the dev stuff I also had to do. And did they hire anyone to help you? printf asked. No, that's the thing. Small fires kept happening here and there, and because of the time I took to fight them, I couldn't be as careful as before on the dev stuff, so I created more fires all the time. Now I'm fighting fires all day and all night, and I hate my job. Why doesn't your employer do anything? Well, I'm good at my job, and I managed to keep things under control long enough that everyone got used to it. When you make a habit of small miracles, people get used to it. Then you're stuck doing miracles all the time, or they will think you don't do your job at all. That sounds very sad, printf added. It is, and because you're the most familiar person with these fires, you get to only work on them more and more until your employer hires someone else to cover your old job, the one you actually loved. If you care hard enough about your work to be the one doing the stuff everyone else hates, you're thanked by doing more and more of that work you don't like until that's all you do. And then there's nothing left for you to enjoy. Then you're unlucky, said little printf. And then our pager went off again. That woman, said little printf to himself as he continued farther of his journey, that woman would be scorned by all the others, by the senior expert, the rock star developer, by the serial early adopter. Nevertheless, she's the only one of them at all who seems helpful. Perhaps that's because she's thinking of something else besides herself. At the corner of the building, printf found a large office with big windows giving a stunning view of the area. Stunning view, not perfectly illustrated. In it sat an old gentleman with reams of documentation on his desk. Ah, here comes the developer, exclaimed the man as printf stood in the doorway. Come in. Looking through the windows, little printf noticed that they were full of writing. With the help of a dry erase pen, the view of the outside world was masked by tons of circles, arrows, cylinders, and clouds. While it was curious the man needed clouds drawn where real ones could be seen outdoors, the whole ensemble was more intriguing. "What is this?" asked our friend, pointing at the windows. "Oh, this is our production system," said the man, not once thinking the question was about the outside world. "I am a software architect." What's a software architect? Mostly, it's someone who knows how to best structure and coordinate the components of large systems so they all fit together well. It's someone who has to know about databases, languages, frameworks, editors, serialization formats, protocols, concepts like encapsulation and separation of concerns. "That is very interesting," said little printf. "Here is someone who can answer all of my questions." He glanced at the architecture diagrams. "Your system is very impressive. Is it running very fast?" "I couldn't tell you," said the architect. "It should, though." "How's the code then? Is it good?" I couldn't tell you." "Are the users happy about it?" I couldn't tell you either, I'm afraid." "But you're a software architect." "Exactly. I am not a developer. It is not the architect who goes in and writes the modules and classes and combines the libraries. The software architect is much too important to go around touching code. But he talks with programmers and developers, asks them questions, provides them guidance. And if the problem is looking interesting enough, the architect takes over the planning." And why is that? Because we're more experienced. We know more about systems and what works or not. Developers can then be an extension of our knowledge to produce great systems. But how do you know if things are going well without getting involved? We trust the developers. So you trust them to implement your ideas correctly, but not enough to come up with their own ideas? The software architect was visibly shaken by this comment. "I guess I might have been a bit disconnected," he finally admitted. "The problem is that after a while, you're asked to work with ideas so much, you don't have a good way to get them tested or verified." He stared down pensively. "Sometimes a software architect does neither software nor architecture, it seems." Little printf left the room, and being done with his visit, exited the building. Am I getting cut off? No picture showing up anymore? The laptop is still going. All right. Well, that's just media support. We can do without it. Little printf, once outside, met a man collecting money for some charity. "Hi," said the man. "How would you feel about helping someone today?" "It would probably make me feel better," said little printf back. "I have been in this office all day, and now I'm more confused than ever." "Ah, I see. Yeah. These people are all developers. They're not really helpful, are they? What they love to say is that they're changing the world, and they pretty much succeeded that, in fact." "Why does it feel so awkward then?" asked little printf. "Well, the best they do is often help convert some people's jobs into programs, or make everyone's leisure more leisurely. Software is eating the world, and that changes its face for sure. But deep down, it's the same old world with a mangled face. The reason it feels awkward is that changing in that way doesn't mean things are getting any better. We have the same flaws and problems we always had and the same holes to fill deep down inside. So how can I get better?" Little printf was visibly anxious. The man thought for a while and offered printf to come help him help others, as this was this man's way of feeling better. During the afternoon, printf told the man about his problems and his adventure. After a long silence, the man said, "The games people play, the roles and reputation they chase and entertain, the fleeting pleasure they derive from solving intricate problems, it's all fun for a while. Ultimately, though, if you do not solve anything worthwhile, if you forget about the people involved, it's never going to be truly fulfilling. And that may be fine, and it may not be, and you may or may not get that from somewhere else than your workplace when you grow up. Work can be work. It can be for the money. It can be for the fun of it. That's okay, as long as you manage to get that fulfillment somewhere in your life. In the end, though," oh, there it is. It's back. Let me figure that out. There's only like one drawing left. Thanks for all the hard work, people, for that last drawing. Yeah, and that may be fine, it might not be, and you may or may not get that from somewhere else in your workplace when you grow up. Work can be work, it can be for the money, and it can be for the fun of it. That's okay as long as you manage to get the fulfillment from somewhere in your life. In the end, though, it's only when you solve problems with a human face that you can feel truly right. What is essential is invisible to the computer. It is the time you have spent on your system that makes it so important, the man added. And when you lost sight of why it made sense to spend time on it, when it became a game of pride, it caused more grief than relief. Developers have often forgotten this truth. If you lose sight of things, working on your systems becomes its own problem. And the most effective solution is to get rid of the system, given it's the problem. It is only when you solve problems with a human face that you can feel truly right, repeated little printf to himself, so he would remember. Printf is now sitting right in front of me, and he is on his way home. Talking with him made me realize how much of what I do flies in the face of what I liked, what I started programming for in the first place. Each of the people printf met are roles I see myself taking one day or another over time. I was encouraged by them to become them, and probably encourage other people to do the same. Where I got dragged into the game of trying to become a real programmer, printf didn't. He said he was okay with not being a real programmer, that he preferred to be a programmer with a human face. Today I'm stuck in this situation where I look back and I have to figure out if I can, too, become a programmer with a human face, or if everything I do is just a job. There doesn't seem to be much that's worthwhile in between. In any case, where printf felt that he didn't need to be a real programmer, I think I feel the same now. End of story.
Fred, this is Fred Herbert.